Welcome to Confessions of a Founder, a podcast where we pull back the curtain on the entrepreneurial journey. I'm Allie Berger, and each week I sit down with successful founders, CEOs, and innovators to explore the raw, real stories behind building a business. From the highs of success to the moments of self-doubt, we get into the lessons learned, risks taken, and the human side of entrepreneurship. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Confessions of a Founder wherever you get your podcasts. Your support helps us bring more stories of resilience and innovation to listeners like you. So grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's dive in to today's Confessions of a Founder. In today's episode, we sit down with Rachel Maeng Brown, CEO and founder of Gen Agency, a trailblazing force in marketing, partnerships, events, and strategy. From co-founding Loot Agency, featured on Netflix in 2024, to being recognized as one of New York City's 20 in their 20s in entrepreneurship and sports, Rachel's journey is a testament to resilience, innovation, and purpose-driven entrepreneurship. Join us as we explore her unique path to success, insights into balancing multiple roles, overcoming challenges, and finding motivation. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or curious about the human side of entrepreneurship, this episode promises wisdom, inspiration, and actionable insights. Rachel, welcome to Confessions of a Founder.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's always so weird hearing your bio read aloud and all these different things that you just kind of start to forget about from like the daily life of just working.
Does that cause a little bit of imposter syndrome for you when you hear it back to yourself?
I think it definitely used to when I was first starting out as an entrepreneur, because I was lucky enough to get some recognition early on. So I think at that point it was, I don't really need to hear it read back to me. But now I think it's nice. It's almost like a reflection of, oh yeah, I did do that. Oh wow, like that's cool. Like I remember doing that. That was fun.
Can you tell us a bit about your background and what inspired you to start Gen Agency?
Yeah, so I'm originally from upstate New York. So actually born in Korea. I'm Korean and Filipina. I lived in upstate New York in Syracuse, which is very close to Canada. Grew up there. Actually, surprisingly, I'm from a area that's like 89% Caucasian. I was one of the only few Asian kids in the area. So that like had a big impact, I think, on my upbringing. And then I went to Rutgers. I was a student athlete, recruited from high school as a coxswain on the rowing team. And the person that sits there, steers a boat, does all the coaching and fun stuff, math. Was at Rutgers for a few years. Everything, I actually started pre-med biomedical engineering. And I thought that I wanted to cure cancer. That's really where my interest was.
Oh my gosh.
Still is. But I realized so early on that what I wanted to do was really more kind of empowering. And it was definitely like in this sports media representation space, but it wasn't really being an agent. It was kind of like the other facets of it. And then luckily, like everything I did after that point was just, getting myself to not only understand like what that area is, but also getting my name in the right doors, in the right conversations, and getting the right names of businesses and industries like under my belt. And then fast forward, worked for the New York Mets for about 9 months, and then left that job, completely took a leap, just quit my job after 9 months. And then TikTok brought me on. I helped migrate the cohort from what it was pre-COVID to what it is now, all the content you see on the platform. So that's why I have a nice camera. So thank you for that. And then right from there, we took some creators from that program. We started our agency. It was originally called Loot. That's the one that you see on Netflix. And then now it's called Gen Agency. And we are just over 3 years in now. So it's definitely been a journey.
It's been a journey, but you've grown so quickly. How did you get into this space of representation for creators?
When I was a student athlete, I went to Rutgers, which is in the Big Ten, so we're one of the power conference schools. And, my friends on the football team, basketball team, wrestling team, like they were on the cover of like magazines, on tickets. They were, being paraded around, doing different things for the university, for the Big Ten. And even myself, I was the representative to student government in the university that represented all the student athletes. And so I was like student athlete of the game multiple times. I worked with our foundation as a volunteer, helping donors like talk to student athletes and see like where their money goes. And so I think I understood what like empowerment as far as representation was and what it could be used for. But we didn't have NIL at that time. So obviously was not getting compensated for any of this. This was just me doing my good things. And I think seeing all that and understanding that that was like representing something, like being an ambassador. And then on the flip side, also kind of like being like a brand sponsor for the university. It really, I think, piqued my interest. And then on the flip side, it was the idea that we weren't getting paid, like we didn't have NIL. It was the idea that there were people who, like once they got onto professional level, so professional sports, like they weren't making as much money as other people were for endorsements, but they're at the same level. They have the ability, they're quarterbacks just like another quarterback. But it really, to me, resonated that, there wasn't that equality. So fast forward, I knew I wanted to go into that, but I knew that the people that know how to do that best on social media are influencers. So that's how I ended up joining TikTok. I realized like if I wanted to consult people on this, if I wanted to work with people and represent people correctly and from experience, I needed to get it from being in the influencer space. So ended up with TikTok. That's what we've been doing for a few years. Our like bread and butter is again like social media marketing. But now we've like branched into like also representing brands, representing athletes, representing teams, leagues, conferences. So yeah, I think it really just stemmed from me seeing this hole and this disparity and wanting to be part of like the democratization.
How did you find your first couple of clients?
Oh, so funny. It's actually one of our former co-founders. I got brought into that TikTok program. So I was with a bunch of different creators, like met them, knew them, things like that. I started consulting different companies on that social media side, both as an influencer and as like a brand strategist, a consultant, things like that. That's how I got introduced to more and more creators. That's where we got like our initial pull. And then actually our agency, when it was called Loot, we had former co-founders as well. Some of the co-founders actually came out of one of the companies that we had all worked in consulting together.
Funny. And then how did you know that you had product market fit, like what you were offering these creators was something that they were looking for and that brands were looking for your sets of skills and creators that you found as well?
I think we were lucky that a lot of these brands were already looking for creators. And I obviously knew that being part of that TikTok cohort and actually working with TikTok like one-on-one, we were doing this in knowing that this was going to lead to monetization. So already knew that that was going to be a thing. And, at that time, back in 2020, creators were already being paid for services, being paid to make content on behalf of brands, whether it was UGC or posted organically. So we kind of already knew those things were in play, but just in conversations with creators and even my experience as a student athlete and my very, very short-lived time as an influencer, I realized like there were so many things I didn't know on the brand side. Like you don't know exactly what legal jargon leads to what things. You don't know exactly what your worth is as far as money goes unless you know the algorithm, the like little formula that certain brands are using, whether it's CPM, CPD, all of those things. So there's this huge gap in knowledge and education on the talent side, the individual side versus the brand side. So just in like through conversations and talking to more people, that's really when we realized like there is this disparity. And the best thing that we can do for influencers and just talent in general is really, really focus on like democratizing this whole creator industry.
When you say democratize, what is your ultimate vision for what that looks like in the creator space?
Yeah, I think for us too, it's not just creators that is like our bread and butter. It's just talent in general, because that could be athletes, that could be the artists we work with. It could be, other levels of content creators or even people who are representing brands, ambassadors. I think really democratization in this sense is just leveling the playing field. I think, you can't make the right decisions without having all the information. Look at NIL. Like NIL is such a huge booming industry right now, and there is no democratization.
For
people who don't know what NIL is, it's name, image, and likeness. It's like the short abbreviation that the NCAA and people like in the athletic space use about the rule that says that college athletes and high school athletes, depending where you are, can now be paid to be influencers and represent brands. That was not a thing pre-2021. And that's a big, big thing, obviously, because student athletes like, Final Four, March Madness, college football season, like we see them everywhere. Their names are everywhere. Like women's basketball has this huge awakening right now. And like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, like you see their names everywhere. So if you see their names everywhere, if a brand pays to have their name in that conversation, then you see the brand everywhere. So there's a lot of power in that. But again, like with that power comes, there's always going to be a person on top and there's going to be a person on the bottom. And the talent is always the person on the bottom because they just don't have the money, the education, the lawyers, whatever it is, to make sure that they understand, what tools and things like the brand is playing with.
You bring up such a good point because I think back to, I started in the sports media space about 10 years, 12 years ago for NBC, and seeing after games how much time these student athletes have to spend talking to the media, being a representation.
And they get fined if they don't. Like Angel Reese just got fined because in WNBA, she didn't stay and make herself available to post-game interviews.
What inspired you to be the protector of these individuals and really dedicate your life to this path?
I don't even know if I'll call it a protector because there are so many things that like we just in general, like you don't know what you don't know. But what we do know, like I want to be able to share it with people that should have the right to be able to know and should have the right to be able to make choices based on having an equal level of education or tools or just exposure that all these other people have. And I went through it in college. I was, again, like a student athlete. I went to a Power 5 conference. And, there are things I didn't know, even looking at my contract. There are things that you sign to in your team rules that say, you are beholden to your school. If your coach says that you broke a team rule, then you could be kicked off at any time. There's no hearing, there's no arguing. You're just gone. And my freshman year, I actually went through that. It was, I came in, most of the time you get roomed with someone from your team. That's pretty usual on our rowing team, at least. But I was roomed with a tennis player because I was like overflow. We had a little too many freshmen. And because of that, like all my friends were on different teams, tennis, gymnastics, volleyball, football. And I never really hung out with my team as much as the rest of my team hung out with each other. And so that became really, really apparent. There are other things like I wanted to volunteer. I was more interested in everything off the water, including obviously being a student athlete in my job. But I was so interested in advocacy and volunteering and everything else that it really came to a head. Like at the end of the season, all the captains sat me down because of the coaches and basically said, you don't act like us. And I don't know if you should be able to stay on the team because you don't act like us. And I really realized then, like looking at my contract, I can be kicked off of this team because this is what the contract says. And like as a little freshman, we don't read the contracts, unfortunately. We just sign them. We're so happy to be on the team, happy to be on scholarship, getting our gear packages. And I think it was at that point I really had this like turning point of, wow, like I am completely at the whim of this team, at these coaches, at this athletic department and this conference, at the NCAA, and they have control over my life. Like my scholarship is what put me in college. So everything I had was, because I was following what they wanted me to do. And so that really changed like my perspective. And I think that also had a big effect on why I ended up doing what I did, was because I always speak from experience. And that was a huge life-changing experience for me that really, I think led into my career in advocacy.
You follow the beat of your own drum and not necessarily go with the pack mentality. What gave you the confidence to do that in your professional life and step out of corporate world to be an entrepreneur yourself?
I love I'm going to say something funny too, but I have like brown girl attitude and like white man confidence. It's like the funniest thing to say because it's so true. Like I do, in a sense, like walk to my own beat and do my own thing, and just what I believe in is what I believe in, and you're not going to move me. And I think that confidence actually comes from, I'm adopted. I am Korean and Filipina, but my parents in America, they're white. And so I grew up in a population that was 89% white. So I was more or less treated as if I looked like everyone else. There was probably lesser incidents of racism and things like that because it was a small community. So because I grew up like that, and knowing that like if I fell on my face or made a mistake, like it was such a small community, you know, people would pick you up. I got this level of confidence. And so, you know, I had the confidence of a Brad or a Chad. And I think that definitely spilled into my career. Was I always realized like, oh, I'm going to do what I think is right because I can and because I should. And then, you know, this level of attitude per se, like how I move and how I do things, I think that's part of it is confidence. Part of it is just the experiences that I've been through. It made me realize like I know exactly what I know, and I am good at what I do because of what I know and because of, you know, what I excel at. And so I don't really question myself in the things that I know that I'm good at, but there are things I don't know. Like, do not ask me how to be like a Michelin star chef, or don't ask me how to like rig a security system. That's not happening. We're going to call someone. We are going to task rabbit that whole thing. That is not me. But the things that I know I'm good at, like I will, you know, continue to be confident in what I can do.
Totally. I love the analogy that you just gave of a mix of brown girl energy or like sass.
It is. Like I got my nice tan on too because I live in LA now and like it's finally getting sunny. So like the brown is coming out. But yeah, truly Chad, audacity and confidence over here.
But you have to have it, right? That's part of it is if you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to believe in you? And you have to go out all day and sell yourself to people. And so they need to believe.
Exactly. Like you're selling your business, you're selling your background. And I'm relatively young too. Like I'm 29. I'm, you know, where I am and how old I am, what I look like, where I came from, you know, my expertise, everything. Like it's very young. And I'm always that person that is the only person that looks like me in the room, whether I'm on a panel speaking about marketing or, you know, I'm in a room talking to executives from a sports team or whatever it is. I'm always the youngest person and the only one that looks like me. And every team and organization I've ever worked in has been like that. And so, you know, it's an eye-opening experience, but I think it also almost like can be reaffirming if you make it that way for yourself. Like, oh, yes, imposter syndrome, like, wow, I should not be here. But at the same time, flip it and say, like, oh, I am here. Like, you did the steps to get here. Now that I am here, and I'm one of the only people that got here that did this, like, I deserve to be here.
Where does that confidence come from for you? How do you let that shine every day, especially when I'm sure there are times when being the only person that looks a certain way in a room makes you feel some kind of way?
Yeah. Again, I think that confidence just comes from like how I grew up, where I'm from. And, you know, my parents were great at letting me fail to learn in that sense. And it was a community for that. So I'm really, really grateful for my parents and how I grew up, the people around me, my school, all of that. I think, you know, the other side of it too is just being okay and being happy with and confident in like who you are again and like what you do, but not letting that be something I think that almost not necessarily stops you, and not letting that thing be the only thing that defines you per se. There are times in meetings when someone will say things like, oh, didn't expect to see you in this meeting, or like, oh, wow, like you look just like the age of my daughter, or things like that. And, you know, I always love to come back with a little like, oh, wow, I'm so surprised that you feel confident saying that in this type of meeting. But anyways, you know, like you gotta, the attitude, you gotta have like the politically correct vernacular clap back of, oh, wow, like, is that what you would tell somebody else in this meeting? Like, come on, we are too old. We are too far into 2024, like, to be saying those things. And even if you think it, like, look at where influencers are. Look at where, you know, people are nowadays being able to be in these certain types of rooms. Like, look at what happened during COVID with, like, Black Lives Matters and just us being more cognizant of age, race, gender, like, all these intersectional diversities. It's not really a time to be making those comments anymore. And so there's a way, I think, to artfully come to the table with something that will stop people from saying, or even maybe not necessarily always thinking a certain way, but even just really like being snapped into it. Like, I am happy to be that person that will snap you back into reality of where we are in 2024.
That is so refreshing to hear. And that's why this was so important to me to have these open conversations. And I appreciate your candor and honesty, because I think that so much happens behind closed doors that doesn't get talked about.
Yeah.
That happens to so many of us. And it's important for us to rally together and share our tips and tools and tricks for how do you overcome that and set any given agenda on the right path.
Right. And I think so many people are afraid of saying something or afraid of like damaging the relationship. But at the same time, like if you have a relationship with someone, it's because of whatever reasons. But like the reason you're at the table is because you are who you are and you deserve to be there. Like if you got there, there's a reason why you got there. So use it while you have it. Like use it before you lose it. If, you know, a situation like that comes up, there's a way to do it artfully where you don't damage the relationship. And to be honest, if if they feel some sort of way and you do damage the relationship, like maybe that wasn't the place for you. And I'm a big, big believer in like what is meant for you is for you. And if it's not, it's not. It will leave, and things come and go all the time. And you can't, be so stuck on one thing happening that's going to be the make it or break it for you, because something's going to come along that is meant for you, whether it has come and you've leveraged it or it hasn't come yet. It's going to be for you. And that's you're going to know exactly when that is.
Staying true to what's right for you and building, you talked a lot about growing up in communities where you didn't necessarily get to choose who's in the community around you and who you surround yourself with. And as we grow older, and especially transition from many of us in corporate world or school world where there's all these systems that we're a part of, to then stepping out and creating your own system and leading other people in this little like universe that is yours. Oftentimes people describe businesses a little bit as like you're building a cult culture of some kind. So how do you vet the people that work with you on your team, the brands that you work with, the different creators that you're and influencers that you're representing? What is the process of vetting to make sure that the right people are in your world for you?
I think it's almost like there's some level of like symbiotic need, right? Like we either need the influencer or the talent. We need the brand or they need us. I think there has to be like a clear vision as to why we are working together. I think that's important because honestly, like idle work is useless. It's a waste of time on both sides. And I'm not trying to waste anyone's money. And I hope someone's not trying to waste my money. So I think that's a big part of it. I think secondly, it's like, is there a goal? Is, the creator looking to have $15,000 in regular revenue every single month? Or are they looking to have 10 article placements? Or are they looking to broker a deal with Verizon, let's say? On the flip side with a brand, is it like they want to increase their brand awareness by X, or they want to bring in X amount of influencers for a single campaign to get X amount of views? Does a team want to build a program and like we're building it for them? We know exactly what like they want and we can get there. For us, I think there needs to be that level of clarity. And sometimes that doesn't come from one meeting. So we are huge on relationships. I travel every other week and then travel within the state of California every single week, multiple times, to continue to build relationships, whether it's with talent, whether it's with venues, brands, teams, leagues, whatever it is. Because when you have that first meeting with someone, you're never going to really get right to the point of things. Like you need to have multiple touch points with them. You need to, really ask those hard questions that you may not get an answer to until you have that like third meeting. So we're big on relationship building. And I think that's a lot of the basis, let's say, of like getting those two first things. But then the basis of how we work together is really that relationship. Like I should be able to have hard conversations with you and ask you hard questions. And even if we fight, like we fight, but like we're going to get to what we're trying to get to at the end and be successful together. So I really think it's like those three areas, the two first kind of being like the entry.
So much of what we see is one type of storyline. Here's how I made it, and it was all wonderful for the most part.
Like it was so nice. Wow.
And let me tell you, I got along with almost everybody along the way, and there were no issues, and we just had traction, and it was growing, and now we're here, and I'm super successful and wealthy, and that's a great story, but that's not how most people's journey
right
go.
Like that's perspective is reality nowadays, and like the perspective that you see is a carefully crafted image and publicist.
100%. And so I would love to know from you, what has the journey of growth actually looked like for Gen Agency? I know you started out under a completely different company, so I'm sure there's been a lot of twists and turns.
You know, it's been a learning experience. I think it's really just been so eye-opening, and like I'm someone that I absolutely love to learn. Like in my free time, I always watch documentaries. I really like the ocean, so like that's pretty much what they are. And you know, I'm a true crime girly, unfortunately, like most females. So like that's the other side of my documentaries. But we're not going to go down into that rabbit hole. I think, you know, as a lifelong learner, like I'm always open to new experiences and learning things, whether it's be from my constituents or from brand partners or talent even. And I think this whole journey has been about learning, not only about the company, the industry, but also about myself. Like I've been in moments, you know, where I had former co-founders and we didn't get along, and there was a huge battle that ensued as we broke up. And like one of the things that, and that is a whole thing too, get yourself a good lawyer, honestly. That's like all I can say to founders. But I think the thing that really started that was, you know, I was working so hard, and I'm like an all or nothing person. So I put everything in, and I put everything in so much that when we had our biggest event to that date, I was so stressed that I ended up developing, like there's a space in your face, like a cavity right here. And like I ended up developing a cyst. And so it blew up my whole side of my face. And literally like I looked like I got kicked in the face by an elephant. And I was in so much pain. I pinched a nerve. I tried to stick it out. And then eventually I finally went to the emergency room, and then the cyst burst while I was there. And so I went into sepsis, like basically like right on that edge of like going into sepsis, like seriously becoming a problem. Because like, you know, the bacteria gets into your bloodstream, and then I ended up having to have surgery. They put me out for it too. I was bedridden for 2 weeks, and it was all because of stress. And you know, even as I'm going under anesthesia, I'm on the phone with my other co-founder. I'm like, you need to close this. Like, I'm going under. You need to be like doing stuff for 2 hours while I'm gone. When I come back, though, and like to that, you know, to that extreme, like I've been there. And I think for me, that taught me a lot about like mental health and being aware of the signs, being aware of the people that you put in your circle that you work with that are co-founders, because they are damn near like your family. And so I think that really, really opened my eyes to how I, you know, craft my environment, how I craft my work-life balance, how I work with people, and how I take signs and like really, really pay attention to how I feel about situations, all those things. I think that was such an eye-opening moment for me when I look back. And even still, you know, I make certain decisions now because of that. Or there have been other things, like I've gotten COVID way too many times, having been on the road and been around people that have been on the road, and you know, spending money versus saving it versus investing it back in the company, like all of those things. I think everything that has happened along the way has just been such a huge learning experience, and has been so eye-opening, like helping me, you know, take the next step as a founder of, okay, like I'm coming into this situation now with a little bit more knowledge, a whole lot of experience, and like a bunch more ideas. And I think that's really like what I've gotten out of it. But like none of it was pretty. You may see me on the carpet at the Emmys, but surprise, surprise, I was in the hospital, like over stress. Like it is true. Like perspective is the reality that the people on the outside see, but it's never the reality of the person who's living it. So it's never pretty. And I don't think I know any founder whose, you know, journey has been pretty and simple. And if it is, like, please let me know, because you must have money in the bank. Somebody must have, you know, balled you out, because that is not what happened to me. And that's not what happens to most founders.
First, I'm taking some space because I so resonate with what you just said. Mm-hmm. And it's really nice. That's why I started this, was to connect with other founders. And we all hide behind our work all day, right? Like we're all so busy that it's really hard to make the time to go out and meet other founders and build community and talk about what we're really going through. And similar story, I developed a really rare Japanese autoimmune condition that like 50 people in the US per year get a year and a half ago, that took me out, had to have emergency surgery, all those things. And we talk so much about like professional struggles, but we don't talk about the fact that we're humans too. And we're expected to be almost like robots, like this ideal leader all the
like,
time.
Oh, sorry, like I had emergency surgery, but I'll be back in like 24 hours.
And you feel
like I'm still stuck under anesthesia. Like, don't let me make decisions right now.
That's such a that requires so much vulnerability in your leadership style that doesn't come naturally to most people, and is also a huge learning lesson that I hear over and over again from founders is like, I had to learn to be human in my business and with my team. And what does vulnerability look like for you? How has that evolved in your leadership style? And where has that allowed for greater connections with others that you work with over time?
Yeah. I think I'm a really big advocate for always telling my story. I think that, I have this huge ability to talk to people because of what I do and because I am an employer, because we have influencers who have a huge audience. Like, I have this crazy opportunity. But on top of it, it's, no one can ever resonate with you if you never tell them what has happened or what you went through or any of that. So I'm very, very open and in that sense, vulnerable about my story, about where I came from, how I was adopted. I'm from another country. I'm technically first generation. What I've gone through, what I plan to do, relationships, even that, I'm pretty open about it. I think because I'm always someone that I want to speak from experience and teach from experience. So I make sure I've done it first. And if I haven't, I'm going to learn it, or I'm going to upwork it, because I do not know how to do that. But with that being said, I've had interns that, we went through our interview and it's great and everything. And he's like, you know what? I want to be really honest. I want to work in professional sports. And that's one of the reasons why I'm taking this internship. But can I ask you, what was it like being one of the only Asians at that whole 200 plus person organization? What was it like being one of the only Asian women? I am so afraid of working for a company and, AAPI month comes up, or Chinese New Year, whatever it might be, a time that this is almost a vulnerable situation that I need to be able to take time off for family or a holiday or whatever it is. And I just don't know if I, would be comfortable having that conversation with a superior or a team member that is not, the same ethnicity as me. And so I was very vulnerable in that moment. And again, all my staff, all my talent that I work with, even the brands, it's about human connection. And there's a point where you're TMI, some things TMI, you don't need to go there, but there's a level of, I think, vulnerability and relatability and human nature that you share with people to let them know, you are a person. As we build this relationship, get to know me. And also that opens up the doors of, oh, wow, you went through this. Hey, do you want to come on my podcast? Or oh, you lived in this area. Oh my gosh, my friend went to that college and lo and behold, we know the same people in the same graduating class. And now our relationship is stronger. And specifically on a staff side, I want them to know if they need to take a day off for mental health, if my talent needs to truly take time off and can't do brand partnerships for a month because of mental health, or they need to travel or whatever it is, I'm very open. Let me know. I don't need to ask questions. If you want to have a conversation about it, I will talk to you. I can refer you to something somewhere, but just, you don't have to tell me all the details, but I do want to know these things because maybe there is something that I can help with, or that maybe even in talking about it, it may be helpful to you.
That's so inspiring. Thank you for sharing. And I my mom's a therapist, so I'm always extremely open about mental health.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah. And that's something that I've noticed, emotional intelligence is something that is missing in a lot of
cultures. I agree. And even founders have such a hard time having genuine romantic relationships too, because this is a journey that's not meant for everyone. My partner, he is a regular 9-to-5er, and he definitely does not like the life of entrepreneurship, but he also doesn't understand some things and sacrifices that I make that may not make sense to a regular person who is working a 9-to-5. Because they're why shouldn't the company pay for that? It's well, surprise, I'm the company. So open up the bank, things like that. So, I think that's the other side of it too, is sometimes we don't share everything because we're afraid of how people will judge us or that they don't understand us. And I think, again, I think that may come back to confidence of just knowing that you can talk about those things, or that you can be confident in doing what you do because it's right for you. But I think that's a whole aspect of it too, is it's hard to have relationships as a founder.
Absolutely. And to your point, having people who understand what you're going through. That was another reason why I decided to start this, is because I don't have anybody in my family who was an entrepreneur or close friends from growing up. And so it's been a huge advantage to talk one-on-one with founders at different events. And I learned so much more in those conversations than anything that I saw online, or that you can like ask somebody random on LinkedIn to grab coffee. Like, it's those in-person conversations with people that really make a huge difference. And this is a super lonely journey. There's it's like over 80% of founders actually struggle with depression. And it's something that we don't talk about a lot. And so you kind of alluded to that loneliness and needing to, or maybe find other people who you can bounce ideas off of, or who can support you in the ways that really understand this with somebody. I can't speak because I've never had to really articulate this to somebody else.
Right? It's so weird. Like, I feel like over time, like I was someone that, I knew perspective was a reality. And so even in high school and college, like my social media, how you like saw me in public, it was always very like, wow, so put together and so professional. And even now, like I am, a proponent of that. Like my social media does like scream like perspective, like pretty, like does all this fun stuff. And I'm authentic when I can be, but there is still that level of like perspective is reality. Like, you don't want your potential brand partners to know that you are just losing it today. Like, you don't want them to know that, but it's okay to be, in that space where you are losing it. Like, it is not a day for you and you are a mess, but you just don't need to put that online. But you can speak candidly about it, like when it comes up in the future in a time and setting that maybe makes sense, or you don't need to, but like, don't pretend that it never happened. Like, it did. It's just maybe not something everyone's seeing.
How have you built a community around you to support you in all the ways that you can't show to brands or to team members?
I think I'm really lucky. Again, my partner is just so incredibly supportive. He sees and he's seen like the ups and downs. We actually used to work at the Mets together. So he saw me during my regular 9 to 5. And I think even then he kind of knew like, she's not going to be here very long. Like, she wants to do her own thing. And so he's really seen like the whole journey. And I think, my parents, again, no one in our family was entrepreneurs, so they don't get it. They're like, what do you do? Explained. Org chart, like full chart. What is what I do? And they're like, I'm like, marketing. I do marketing. They're like, oh, okay. So, there are people around me that I think 100% support me that still don't understand what I do. I think I'm lucky along the way to find people who understand parts of what I do at least. And you know what? Like, both of those are enough. You may not ever find someone or people or a group that fully understands everything that you do or who you are or those things. But being able to have people around you that support you, I think that's the most important, whether it's a mentor, whether it's family, a romantic relationship, whether it's friends, partners, co-founders. I think just having people who like support the aspects of you, knowing like who you are as a person. It may be like from a business side, like they know you're a good person. They support your decisions. They support you going out and getting business and taking risks. But like, regardless, like they are here for you. Like having a corner, like we work in boxing. So like having your corner, that is the most important thing. And like, that is what I know, that I have so many good people in my corner that are here for me, here to see me win, like here to wipe that blood, like off me, that sweat, like when I'm down, they are here for me. And I think that is the biggest thing that you can have as a founder. And again, it may not be people who fully understand what you do or fully see your vision even, but they are here for you. If you're someone that like me, like your business, your career is a part of your identity, like having people who support who you are as your identity in general, that means that they support what you're doing. And that's enough.
So balance is a hard thing. I know that we all struggle with as founders. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish, obviously, between the business and the self because so much of it is intertwined. Mm-hmm. How do you approach, I call it work-life integration to maintain
right? There is no balance. What is balance? Like, I think that I got open to that idea, or even the importance and even the lack thereof, like in college, even in high school. Like I literally volunteered hundreds of hours before I even got to college. As a volunteer. And then I was also a coach. I was a multi-sport student athlete, honor roll, AP, all that kind of stuff. Like I was an overachiever. Like I was quintessential Asian, like you overachieve. So did all of that. And then even in college, again, like student athlete, I was pre-med biomedical engineering for 2 years. Then when I knew I wanted to go into entrepreneurship, I switched to economics and business. So still math major, hard major. And then I was in like 6 clubs and organizations on all the e-boards, like did all this, volunteered 300 hours. It's just way too much. I should have probably not done something.
Got no sleep.
You know what? Digress. Oh no, got no sleep, lived off coffee. If we had NIL deals back then, Dunkin' Donuts would have hit me up because like I was there like clockwork. I had Keurigs in like 2 different dorms, like my dorm, my friend's dorm. I was like caught in meetings. They're like, what is in your cup? I'm like, 5-hour energy because I was so busy. But say that to say, I really understood that like there were these things pulling me all different directions, but at the same time, I had that founder mentality back then, this growth mentality and this vision mentality of like, I need to do all of this or else I'm not going to get where I need to go. And even as a founder now, same exact vision. Like I need to be at all these events. I need to be on every meeting. I need to be with my staff, train new people, talk to my influencers, build relationships. I need to be everywhere all at once or else I'm not going to get where I need to be. And I think that is like the boiled down version of like founder mentality where you can't have a work-life balance. Like you can't not do things. And because I still think like that, and I think I will always think like that. And I can't say that no one should not think like that because of it. And it's very true. Like when you're a founder, when you're a startup or, you know, you are trying to do things for yourself, like you have to take all those opportunities. Every single opportunity could lead you to something. But I think each of us are different. And I think that I'm lucky. Again, my partner is like phenomenal at being like, you need to stop. Like you need to chill. Or, you know, I unluckily, like went through that big health scare because of stress. That also changed my perspective. I think each of us knows internally when enough is enough. And I think we get real close to that like line of like enough is too much. But I think we all kind of know. And I think, you know, where we think we know, maybe we could probably even peel back a little bit more and do a little bit less. But I think regardless, like everyone's different. So you can't tell someone that their idea of work-life balance, because again, I work 10 to 14 hours a day. Like I really do. That's my idea of work-life balance. And then being able to watch a movie or hang out or make dinner or go out to dinner, do stuff on the weekends, play with my nieces, like go to the beach. That's my idea of work-life balance. And that is not the same as everyone else's. Some people might want to work right through that. Some people may want to work way less than that. But like everybody has an idea of work-life balance that fits them. And I think that they should just be really intentional about having that level of balance, if not a little bit more, for themselves.
What self-care, I want to get a little more tactical. What self-care practices or routines do you prioritize to stay mentally and emotionally healthy?
You know, I think the idea of like self-care is so funny. I think self-care is just things that we enjoy that make us happy, whether it's physically, mentally, whatever. So like I love doing skincare because I don't really wear a lot of makeup, never really have. So like I always do skincare. I have a routine like skincare in the morning, coffee, breakfast, work, like afternoon, like a little bit of lunch, like I, lift on certain days. So that's part of my self-care. Self-care for me is also at the end of the night, making dinner for my partner and I have a cat. His name is Kevin. He's real weird, playing with my cat, Kevin. And like, on weekends, like I love to do other things with other people, or like sometimes I do go to work events and truly enjoy it. So I think it's all different things, honestly. Again, I do love documentaries, and I have OCD. So like I do kind of already like my mind goes all places all the time. And so like having those bingeable shows, and even shows that like there's a comfortability, I think, in rewatching shows, you already know what's going to happen. And so I like rewatching shows. It just helps me. So like I know what triggers me. I know what makes me happy, what keeps me content. Listening to music, I have certain playlists that I play at certain times of the day, certain times in our business cycle, like pre-deal, post-deal, during deal, that like at this point, just like you say, like, oh, you have a lot of success in this amount of time. Well, I've had a lot of ups and downs in this amount of time. So I know me best now, and I know exactly what I need at certain times. Not to say that it still does not get hard and that I still don't have really, really highs and really, really lows, but like I know what my version of self-care is, and it may not be the same as everyone else. And everyone has their own version of self-care. But regardless, like I prioritize the self-care when I know it fits into the right places.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
I think some of the best piece of advice is sometimes things that are maybe meant to be like a dig at you. They're like, oh, you're doing too much. Or, oh, wow. I always have, unfortunately, a lot of white men say like, oh, your little thing, your little company. Oh, that thing you do. Oh, that side job. I'm like, no. It's not a side hustle. Like, this is my full, 24/7 job. Like, this is my thing. Like, I own this company. It lives and dies. If it fails, it's on me. Like, this is my thing. And I think that my best piece of advice I've gotten was how people would talk about my company to me or talk to me about certain things. It was almost that negative stuff. I'm a competitor, have been for life, worked with, was a student athlete in high school, student athlete in college. I've worked with professional teams. I am a competitor. So I think it really is those negative, low comments. I think that has been my biggest motivation, and therefore it has been my best thing that has powered me and helped me craft the way I do things. I think the one thing that always sticks with me on a mental health side, though, is one of my closest friends, his mom said to me, because his sister was having a mental health and, anxiety, just being hey, I'm doing too much. I feel some type of way. And I said, yeah, I suffer with that too. And she turned to me and said, no, you don't. You just look so put together. How could you? And I was like, oh my gosh, not in an offensive way, but that's really how people thought of me. And so I think that helped me be more vulnerable, but also realize yes, that's how people think of me, but I am not, again, a robot. And, I should come down to earth more and be more relatable, whether that's with business partners or talent or whatever it is. I think that really, for me, changed the way I thought about how I could be relatable and how I could work and build relationships.
And you're doing so in a super fast environment. Get the
yeah, very much. It's NIL rule, new rule. Influencers, new restriction. We're canceling TikTok. There's always something going on. And same thing with professional sports, collegiate sports. It's this game, this country, this thing. There's always something new.
How do you continue to keep up and learn and stay curious in this ever-evolving landscape?
I'm a person, I will be a lifetime learner. I'm always asking questions. I'm always listening. I'm always looking up things. I think also having an ear to the culture, an ear to the ground is really important. Again, culture creators are that younger generation. It is really technically that Gen Z right now and alphas, but it's that let's call it 15-ish up to 25. Those are really, really culture creator space. And so what we thought was cool back then, ooh, let me get my Ed Hardy. Ed Hardy was not cool, as we grew up. And now guess what? Ed Hardy's back. And I see girls with little Ed Hardy crop tops and little white Ed Hardy bag. And I'm oh goodness. They're it's retro. Oh, we're not that old. You don't need to do that to us. It's not retro. It's your mom's. But say that to say, that is that culture creator group. And I think by paying attention to them, we can kind of predict trends. And again, we went into this space to work with influencers to be part of the culture. And so influencers, social media, that is a huge driver of culture. Look at even the music side, the Billboard top 10, top 100, whatever, category you're looking at, a lot of it is driven off of what's popular from social media. So knowing what's going on, what's new, the trends, a hashtag, I think all of that really does come with the social media space. So just being really ingrained in not only our talent, but our community and our platforms, I think that's helped us understand, how can we take that and then, twist it around and make it for a brand, or twist it around and make it for a team or some sort of client or strategy. It's understanding the people, the audience that we're trying to get to, and the platform that they're on.
And that is also an ever-evolving target, what the audience wants and what platform it
I know.
is.
They're this is good for you. This is bad for you. Oh, we want this. No, we want this now. And you're oh my goodness.
What do you think is the future of all of this in the next couple of years with influencers and the creator economy and brand partnerships? What does Rachel predict the next 1 to 3 years looks like for that space?
like influencer marketing, just at what it is by dictionary definition, it's been around forever. Like, think about it. You know, there are people who like Tour de France, like things like that. Like, those have been staples in sports, and people who win and or in the Tour de France, like they have always been doing endorsements. Endorsements are a type of like influencer talent marketing. And, you know, even the idea of celebrity boxing, celebrity golf, all those things, like you have people who would get in the ring and fight, and they are celebrities, and it's for entertainment. So entertainment has been around so long that it's so predictable. Everything ebbs and flows. And so, you know, influencer marketing had its like biggest boom growth period, I think from 2020 through now. I think it's still growing. I think with more education, more tools, more technology, we only hone in and get better. And so I think people are going to be, you know, brands are going to be more aware of what the culture is, how to grow it, how to manage it, how to measure it. I think that's going to get better. I think that talent is going to understand how to use AI better, is going to understand like what the algorithms are, what they can do, their time management, all that is only going to get better. I don't think it's going anywhere, platform specific or not. And even with NIL, like NIL is the second coming of influencer marketing. It is the same exact thing. It's talent marketing, endorsement marketing, all the above. It's the wild, wild west right now because there's not a lot of rules and regulations. Eventually, it'll equal out. And, you know, the NCAA will or won't be around, and they will or won't have certain rules put into place, just like each university or each conference or state will too. So I think everything always equals out and like gets, you know, in the rhythm and flow of things. And I think that's how everything is going to go. Like, people are going to be learning, people are going to be failing. Rules are going to change. It's going to impact it. It's always like an ebb and flow. It's also a circle, but I think it's just going to continue on.
A lot of who listens to this podcast are founders, and most of us have a full-time business that we're focused on. We just talked about how many hours a day that takes. And now it feels oftentimes, and I came from the media world back in the day, so I understand how much time it takes to content create and look for audiences and find the right trends to hop onto to get people to rally around and grow your community and all those kinds of things. And oftentimes, again, that's a full-time job in and of itself. So how do you recommend that founders like us integrate that digital presence into our lives effectively and efficiently, given how little time we have to focus on that?
I am really bad about this too, personally. I just like have no time. Literally, I have no time, so I don't put the effort into cultivating more of my community and speaking to them more regularly about like what I do. You know, I try to put more effort into it. There are certain tactics like that we could get granular in, as far as using trending sounds, dances, challenges, hashtags, SEO. You know, there's all of those things that require research and knowledge. And again, you can look those up, or you can watch a TikTok video and somebody that already knows that stuff. You can hire someone who does all that stuff. As far as actually capturing content and creating content, like we're all talking about like schedules and time management. Like, there's two ways you can do it, right? You can schedule creating the content and or capturing it on certain days, and then you know, blocking it together and scheduling it for different times to be posted out. I sometimes do that. Sometimes when I have time, I will, again, do that whole block and then schedule them on certain days on my peak moments. But I actually just got the new Ray-Ban glasses, the Ray-Ban Meta, like Skylar ones that you can like wear all day. And so like my purpose for that was more like vlog style almost, of like what my day looks like, of what I actually do. Because again, like people are so interested in this founder space, they think they want to get into it, but like surprise, there are all these other things that you have to do, have to know. But also, you know, people are interested in NASCAR, NFL, NBA, MLB, anything else we're doing. And so, you know, people watch content because they're interested in it. They want to be educated by it. They want to be entertained by it, whatever it is. And so like finding those people and then finding the content that those people want, that's ultimately what content creation and creating an audience is. So I think, you know, if that's something that you want to do, you really do have to carve out time for it. You got to put the things together, whether it's finding a person, watching a video and learning about it. But either way, it's got to get done if you want to go down that route. And I think as a founder, that's probably the best thing you can do, because, you know, you are your best advocate for your business. You know it best, you can sell it best. And whether you're trying to reach an audience of talent or an audience of brands, like there is a target audience out there for you. And so it is the best way to advocate for yourself.
It's so funny that you're bringing up the glasses right now, because I remember back in 2018, I actually drove around LA looking for, at the time, Snapchat had just come out with their first set.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Glasses.
Yeah, we ran the campaign, or we had creators on the campaign for the Ray-Bans Meta glasses when they first came out.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
We've seen the progression.
I was the first reporter to use them at a Super Bowl event. So I was looking for them because I was trying to use them at the Super Bowl in Houston that year. And so finally I found a pair, thank goodness. But it's so funny, the evolution of like every couple of years, glasses come back into the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're only going to get better. You've got like the Apple Vision Quest and the, whatever the Meta glasses are, like, there's a lot. They're just like content creation. We could make it easier for you. But again, you still have to plan the content, make the content, edit the content, post the content. So.
Totally. Rachel, thank you so much. You've given me and the audience so many great insights and a peek into this whole wild west of influencer culture and partnerships and athlete culture, being public figures. I really appreciate all of that insight, and more importantly, your authenticity and your vulnerability to share all about what you've gone through as a founder and what your journeys looks like so far and how you've managed all of those ups and downs. Last question for you. What is the biggest piece of who and how you are, or what's made you successful that I haven't asked you about?
You did kind of ask about this, but I think it really just is confidence. And I think it's like, I do genuinely have like an unwavering belief in myself, and what I am here, like, put on this earth, however you want to say it, like what I am supposed to do and what's meant for me and what I will accomplish. Like, I truly, truly believe in that. I think it's come over years, but I think like it's innately in me too. And I think everybody, like, you are a founder because you believe in something and you believe in yourself, that you are the only person with the only company that can solve the problem in the way that you see it. I think there's so much power in that, like, as a founder, having that mentality, and like, whether or not you feel confident today, tomorrow, or at any time, like, you went out on this founder journey because you are confident in what you bring to the table and what your company could potentially bring to the table and what you can solve, and that you are the best person to solve it. So I think like my best advice is just leaning into that and like really, really innately believing it internally, but also like projecting it out to other people, because I think there's a lot to be said about having confidence and people wanting to work with you because you are so confident in what you're saying, or you say it so well and succinctly because you know it so well because it's your industry. And so I think confidence, as much as everyone says like confidence is key, I think confidence is actually really key in entrepreneurship. Like, it is the thing that will make you successful or will be your worst enemy.
What's next for Gen Agency? What's next for Rachel? What are you most excited about that you're working on right now? Tell us all the things.
So many things. Way too many things. But we are opening up a location with a partner in Los Angeles and Santa Monica in late August. Yeah. So we will have... Thank you. This will be our first location, which is really cool. We will have a full like sound recording stage for actual small venue concerts. We will have 4 recording booths, a podcast booth, and then also just photo video areas. Every month we'll be showcasing new artists from major labels and bringing in influencers to help us promote. Additionally, we have this new show, so like video first network, where creators, instead of the traditional, a studio comes in, owns part of the show and gets part of your revenue, we actually have a monthly subscription. Super, super low, $1,200 a month, where actually we will produce the whole show for you. You will get the full podcast video episode. You'll get short form content for reels. Like, you will get everything, all the way up to scales up all the way to where like we'll find talent, book talent, build your set, like manage your social media. And so for us, it's like a really almost like not base level per se, but it's a way to break into the video first podcast and or audio first podcast area without having to be sought after by like these studios and having to have this big audience and everything. Like, we are just here to facilitate and like have the pieces for you to take it and run with it. And then if you leave and go to a big podcast network, like, we are just happy for you that we could facilitate and have you for that amount of time. So that location is super, super big for us. We're also making some moves in the NIL space, ideally going to have our NIL education and workshops in hundreds of schools by the end of 2024. So we have a lot of cool things coming out.
Rachel, it's a pleasure to get to know you. I so see why we were connected, and your energy is infectious.
Good people know good people.
That's so true. So true. And maybe I'll come tape in your new studio someday.
Oh, really? You should.
Thank you so much, Rachel Maeng Brown. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I look forward to following your journey in the years to come. Hopefully we can have you back on to share all of the new information.
I'm always happy to. Let me tell you more about what happened to me.
I love it. Okay, thank you so much. And that wraps up another episode of Confessions of a Founder. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and took away valuable insights from our incredible guest. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this episode with someone in your life who could use a little entrepreneurial inspiration. We'll be back next Tuesday with another founder who's ready to share their story, their struggles, and the lessons they've learned along the way. So be sure to tune in, and until then, keep chasing your vision and embracing the journey. Thanks for listening.